Hanli, if there is a next life, I only wish to live as an ordinary person and peacefully live out my days. May we never meet again. My name is Mu Peiling. I was born into the Mu family of Tianan, an immortal cultivation family. Since I can remember, the spiritual plants in our courtyard were evergreen year-round, and a faint spiritual qi permeated the air. The elders would discuss nothing but the intricacies of cultivation techniques and the quality of medicinal pills. Back then, I would hold the immortal cultivation classics passed down through our family, my fingertips tracing the yellowed pages, my heart filled with yearning for the great Tao. I always believed that with the resources bestowed by my family and my not-so-bad innate talent, as long as I cultivated wholeheartedly, I would surely advance steadily on this path to immortality. As for the romantic entanglements others often spoke of, to me, they were nothing more than hindrances on the path of cultivation, never stirring even a ripple in my heart. My first encounter with Hanli was in the Luoyun sect's medicinal garden. At that time, I was a foundation establishment cultivator, tasked with overseeing the junior disciples in the medicinal garden. He, however, was merely one of the many qi condensation disciples, the most unremarkable among them. He wore faded sect robes, almost white from repeated washing, his figure slender, and his eyes held a tranquility that belied his age. Each day, he would silently tend to the spirit herbs, speaking little and never engaging in disputes. I didn't pay him any particular attention, merely imparting my insights on cultivating medicinal herbs and teaching him the profound ice art. Back then, gazing at his respectfully bowing figure, how could I have foreseen that this seemingly ordinary disciple would one day stir up unending turmoil in the depths of my tranquil heart? Later, when I heard Hanli was going to participate in the sword trial assembly, a hint of surprise arose in my heart. The sword trial assembly was an opportunity for the Luoyun sect's young disciples to distinguish themselves. Most participants were foundation establishment cultivators, or the most exceptional talents within the qi condensation stage. With his cultivation at the mid-qi condensation stage then, participating in such a grand event was no different from inviting humiliation upon himself. I once encountered him on a path in the medicinal garden and wanted to ask him his reasons, yet seeing his usual calm and unperturbed demeanor, the words died on my lips. Everyone has their own choices, so why should I meddle? On the day of the sword trial assembly, the sect plaza was packed with people. Disciples from various peaks wore robes of different colors, cheering on their favored participants. On the arena, the booming sounds of spiritual energy clashing echoed ceaselessly, and sword light and hand seals intertwined, drawing gasps of awe from the crowd below. I had originally stopped to watch the spectacle, but when Hanli stepped onto the stage, I unconsciously clenched the handkerchief in my sleeve. He was still clad in his simple robes, and facing an opponent in the early foundation establishment stage, he showed no trace of complacency. After just a few exchanges, he defeated his opponent. In the subsequent matches, he continued to overcome all obstacles and defeat every opponent. Even when facing opponents a major cultivation realm higher than him, he always managed to rely on his uncanny footwork and endless array of techniques to turn peril into safety. At that moment, standing amidst the crowd, gazing at that composed figure on the arena, I realized for the first time that I couldn't see through him. It was as if he was shrouded in a layer of mist. The closer I got, the more I sensed the profound secrets hidden within him. After the sword trial assembly concluded, I began to secretly observe his movements. I watched him commute daily between the medicinal garden and his residence, and occasionally leave the sect to procure supplies. This observation continued for several years. During this time, Hanli would often seek me out to converse. Sometimes, in the pavilion of the medicinal garden, he would hold an ancient text and discuss his cultivation insights on the profound ice art with me. Other times, by the stream behind the sect mountain, he would recount tales of his travels outside the sect, his voice imbued with a youthful vivacity. Over 20 years passed, quietly slipping away amidst these casual conversations. In spring, we watched blossoms drift down together. In autumn, we sat side by side on the cliff, watching the setting sun paint the horizon crimson. My affection for him slowly blossomed during our daily interactions. I thought that once he successfully established his foundation, I would confess my feelings to him. Back then, I naively believed that as long as our cultivation levels weren't too far apart, and as long as I took the initiative, we could walk hand in hand on the path of immortal cultivation and witness all the wonders of the world together. But I never imagined that this gentle and reserved Hanli was actually far more than he seemed. And fate's cruel jest always arrived without warning. That day, above the Luoyun sect, a terrifying surge of spiritual energy suddenly erupted. Clouds churned, and the heavens and earth changed color. The disciples throughout the entire sect were also awed by this immense pressure that they couldn't move. I stood in the courtyard, looking up at the place where the spiritual energy converged, my heart filled with unease. It wasn't until I later heard that Hanli had successfully broken through to the nascent soul stage in seclusion that I felt as if struck by lightning. I stood stunned, unable to recover for a long time. So, he had been hiding his true strength all along, and the gap between us had been an unbridgeable chasm from the very beginning. At that moment, the shock in my heart, intertwined with disappointment and unwillingness, pressed down on me until I could barely breathe. But before I could recover from this blow, the family's coercion followed swiftly. My elder brother was severely injured during a mystic realm exploration, crippling his cultivation. To stabilize their position, the Mu family unexpectedly demanded that I enter into a marriage alliance and marry the young master of the Yen family from Qingyang City. I had long heard rumors about that senior brother Yen. He was short and stout, with an oily face and known to frequent pleasure houses, his cultivation merely at the late qi condensation stage. How could I possibly marry him? I knelt in the family's ancestral hall, pleading with the elders to retract their decree. But they only repeated that it was for the sake of the family, and then ignored my desperate pleas. With no other path left, I thought of Hanli. Clutching onto my last shred of hope, I went to his cave dwelling, hoping to seek his protection. But he merely, from behind a protective formation, rejected me with an utterly indifferent tone. Those words, "This is none of my concern," were like a cold blade piercing through my final illusion. Left with no choice, I could only falsely claim to be his concubine. Only by borrowing the prestige of his nascent soul cultivation could my clan be made to abandon the idea of a marriage rearrangement. Afterward, I accompanied Hanli to attend the Southern Heaven Trade Fair. Along the way, we encountered the Southern Ridge Marquis. That Southern Ridge Marquis was a mighty cultivator of the late nascent soul stage. When his gaze fell upon me, it carried undisguised greed. He proposed to use a top-grade magic treasure to exchange for me with Hanli. I stood by the side, my heart sinking to rock bottom. I was merely a falsely claimed concubine. In his eyes, perhaps, I truly was nothing more than an item to be traded. But to my surprise, Hanli actually refused without hesitation. He looked at the Southern Ridge Marquis, his tone calm, yet held an unquestionable firmness. "Miss Mu is a disciple of my Luoyun sect. She is absolutely not an item for trade." At that moment, the Southern Ridge Marquis's expression turned ugly. The tension in the air instantly spread. I had even prepared myself for Hanli to compromise, but he didn't. He would rather risk coming to blows with the Southern Ridge Marquis than hand me over in exchange. Sunlight filtered through the carriage curtains and fell upon him, outlining his tall and upright figure. At that moment, my heart was deeply moved. A warm current surged from the depths of my heart. Only then did I understand that, unbeknownst to me, I had unknowingly fallen in love with this seemingly indifferent man. Later, we embarked on the Jishi journey together. Along the way, we once fled together from the pursuit of demonic beasts and once shared dry rations in a mountain cave. During the days I spent with him, I became increasingly certain of my feelings. I longed to become his true concubine, to stay by his side, even if it was just to serve tea and pour water, or merely to watch him from afar. Finally, on a night when the moonlight was bright and clear, I mustered my courage and confessed my feelings to him. But his reply plunged me into an endless abyss of darkness. He said, "Miss Mu, there is nothing more between us." He even suggested that I become an adopted sister under senior Nangongwan, completely severing my lingering hopes. At that moment, I looked at his indifferent gaze and felt my entire body turn cold. All my expectations and aspirations vanished into thin air. Despite this, I still did not give up my pursuit of immortal cultivation. I knew that only by raising my cultivation could I narrow the gap between us, and only then would I be worthy to stand by his side. I immersed myself in cultivation. After several years, I finally succeeded in forming my core. Later, I began cultivating the peak primordial cultivation art he had given me, only so that one day I could catch up to him on the path of immortal cultivation. Before Hanli departed for his travels in the Great Gene, he had someone send a dozen or so core formation puppets, saying they were for my self-defense. Looking at those exquisitely crafted puppets, a trace of warmth bloomed in my heart. Perhaps he wasn't entirely indifferent to me. But the cruelty of fate ultimately did not spare me. While Hanli was in seclusion, attempting to break through to the spirit transformation stage, I felt my own cultivation had also stabilized and decided to attempt breaking through to the nascent soul stage. I set up a spirit gathering formation and sat cross-legged, circulating my spiritual energy to assault the bottleneck. At first, everything went smoothly. Spiritual energy flowed smoothly through my meridians, and the rudimentary form of the nascent soul also gradually appeared. But at the critical moment, inner demons seized the opportunity to invade. Those past events related to Hanli surged into my mind like a tide. His composure when he emerged, his brilliance at the grand event, the fleeting tenderness when we had to pretend, the coldness when he rejected me, his protection during the Southern Ridge Marquee incident. All the stirrings of my heart, expectations, disappointments, unwillingness, and despair intertwined, transforming into countless inner demons, furiously tearing at my divine sense. I wanted to break free, to calm my mind and suppress the inner demons, but those obsessions had long since seeped into my very bones. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't dispel them. Ultimately, my spiritual energy suffered backlash and my meridians shattered. At the critical moment of my breakthrough, my efforts failed at the last step. My consciousness gradually blurred and I perished here. Looking back at my life, from initially being wholeheartedly devoted to the Tao and disdaining matters of love, to meeting Hanli and gradually falling into the net of love, I experienced the sweetness of a stirred heart, the torment of anticipation, the bitterness of disappointment, and the agony of despair. I was trapped by love and ultimately perished because of it. Perhaps this was my destiny. I once yearned to find the grand Tao of immortality on the path of immortal cultivation, and once extravagantly hoped to spend my life with the one I loved. But in the end, the grand Tao was not achieved, and love bore no fruit. Everything turned into nothingness. If there is a next life, I only wish not to meet Hanli again. I only wish to be wholeheartedly devoted to the Tao and live out this life peacefully. Okay, that's all the content for this video. If you enjoyed it, please don't hesitate to like, share, and subscribe. After all, your support is my motivation to keep creating content. I'm Hanli. See you in the next video.